Hello and welcome to Maystar's Occupational Health and Safety Orientation. In the unlikely event of an emergency, please follow instructions from your supervisor. The assembly area or muster point will be in front of the head office or at the site trailer or at the site-specific designated location on site. Please ask any questions. Maystar's Health and Safety Policy Statement. What is the purpose? It identifies the commitment of Maystar to the health and safety of employees, workers, and others who may be affected by our work. As an employer, we recognize our responsibility for health and safety in the workplace, and we take every reasonable precaution for the protection of employees and workers and the prevention of injury and ill health. Safety is everybody's responsibility. It is the responsibility of every employee worker to protect his or her own health and safety by working in legal compliance, the laws and regulations. Maystar has an environmental policy statement too. What are the objectives? To train, educate, inform, and consult with our workers about environmental issues that may affect their work. It promotes the efficient use of materials and resources throughout our company. It also endeavors to use non-hazardous materials and product when practicable. The two main pieces of regulations is the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the regulations for construction projects. This is the green book that is found on sites and in the office. It protects workers against health and safety hazards on the job by setting minimum standards for safe work practices. Any worker on site and in the office can use this for reference. Worker expectations. General rules. We are all professionals in a work environment. There is no horseplay, no fighting, no scuffling, no violence. Cell phones, headphones, Bluetooth are not permitted while working. Example, operating heavy equipment. Alcohol and drugs. Working under the influence or possession of alcohol or drugs are grounds for immediate removal from the work site. Smoking is permitted in designated areas only as dictated on sites and in the head office. Maystar's commitment to safety. First, we have our Health and Safety Board that is available in the Maystar site trailer and also in the head office. Acts regulations, this is the green book, and it is seen right beside the safety board, and obviously it is available for review at any time. WMIS, MSDS, SDS, it's available in the site office and in the head office, and also it is available for review at any time. Maystar has a multi-workplace joint health and safety committee where a meeting is held every 3 months in the head office. Minutes and members are posted on every Maystar safety board, and it's available for your review at any time. Maystar sites may also have a joint health and safety committee as well, if it meets the requirements. Toolbox talks will be held weekly on site with all workers. Job hazard analysis will be completed by all subcontractors to identify hazards and controls for their scope of work. This is Maystar's multi-workplace joint health and safety committee. These are our members: management co-chair, management member, worker co-chair, worker member, and additional worker member. Responsibilities. We expect a high degree of safety consciousness to be exercised at all times. Safety must never be compromised for the sake of getting the job done quickly. An ongoing effort is required by everyone to continuously identify, assess, and control hazards, both prior and during the work itself. As said before, safety is everybody's responsibility. And if everyone does their part, workplace injuries can be eliminated. Workers' rights. The first right to refuse unsafe work, the right to know, the right to participate. The right to know. So we all have the right to know about the hazards that affect us. How can we know about these hazards? Through orientation, training sessions, such as toolbox talks, on-the-job instructions, WMIS. The next right, the right to participate. All workers have the right to participate in health and safety activities. So this can be through the Joint Health and Safety Committee meetings, toolbox talks, the job hazard analysis. Our health and safety rep may voice concerns. Members of trade committees on site, or the Maystar Joint Health and Safety Committee. And obviously workers can report any unsafe practices and conditions to their supervisor. The last right is the right to refuse unsafe work. If a worker is ever asked to perform a task that they consider unsafe and could lead to critical injury, death, or illness, every worker has the right to refuse to perform unsafe work without reprisal. The work refusal process. So in case work refusal does occur on site, these are the steps. Okay, as we talked about, worker refuses to work because obviously the work can endanger his or her health and safety. Worker reports a problem to supervisor, health and safety rep, worker committee member gets called in, supervisor also is there, and they investigate in presence of worker and worker representatives. Now, if there's an agreement, actions taken to correct the situation, worker returns to work. No, worker has reasonable grounds to believe, the worker continues to endanger health or safety. A MOL inspector is called in, and then worker will be assigned reasonable alternative work until a decision is made. Inspector investigates in presence of worker, and there's going to be a written decision by the MOL, and corrective action will be ordered. Employer responsibilities. So the employer, meaning Maystar, must ensure that prescribed protective devices, equipment, materials are provided, used, and maintained. Ensure that training and competent supervision are provided. And Maystar must take every precaution reasonable under the circumstances to protect all workers on site. Every employer must exercise due diligence. How do they do this? They must implement a plan to identify possible workplace hazards and carry out the appropriate corrective action to prevent accidents or injuries arising from these hazards. In other sense, the employer shall take all reasonable precautions. Supervisor responsibilities. Supervisors must be familiar with legislative requirements, Maystar policies, and procedures. They must ensure that work is done in a safe manner, be knowledgeable and advise workers of actual or potential hazards, provide instructions for the protection of workers, take every precaution reasonable to protect the worker, enforce the requirements of the Maystar HSC program, investigate, record HSC deficiencies, and corrective actions. Supervisors can be on site and in the head office. Worker responsibilities. Workers can be in the head office and also on site. Workers must work in compliance with legislation and Maystar policies and procedures. Workers must participate in HSC training and investigations. They must immediately report hazardous conditions to their supervisor, use personal protective equipment, PPE, as required when they are on site, never make protective devices ineffective, never engage in unsafe behavior. The Maystar Occupational Health and Safety Program identifies all roles and responsibilities. It identifies responsibility for all workers, all employees to comply with all safety regulations and to follow safe work practices carried out. Job hazard analysis. This is a mandatory requirement by Maystar for all subcontractors on site. It is required each time employees undertake a task in the field environment. It is daily. All job hazard analysis shall be developed in sufficient detail, and all consideration shall be given to the movement, work area, specific hazards, safety rules, and environment. The JHA, in other words, job hazard analysis, is completed prior to the commencement of work. How to complete a job hazard analysis? Well, there's 4 steps. 1 is identify your task. This is related to your scope of work. 2 is identify hazards related to that scope of work. 3 controls or eliminates those hazards. And 4, resume work. So everyone reviews this job hazard analysis document and they sign off prior to starting resuming work. Personal protective equipment. Maystar has a PPE policy in place where it identifies the types of PPE that is mandatory on site at all times. This is head protection, foot protection, eye protection, and high visibility clothing. Additional PPE that can be used on site is hearing protection and respiratory protection. Head protection must meet CSA standards, and as said, it is mandatory in all projects. Foot protection must meet CSA standards, must be puncture resistant, must have ankle protection, high voltage protection is mandatory, and obviously work boots are mandatory in all projects. Eye protection must meet CSA standards as well. No contact lens may be worn on site. Coverall safety glasses are to be worn over normal prescription glasses, and as said before, eye protection is mandatory. Other PPE, such as the high visibility clothing, this is mandatory in all projects as well, and it must be CSA Type 2 or Type 3 only. Hearing protection required where designated. Examples can include earmuffs, earplugs. Respiratory protection, obviously use appropriate filters for task. Wearers must be clean shaven when wearing respiratory protection. They must be fit tested and trained, and they must be properly stored and cleaned. Other PPE that can be used on Maystar sites, and it is task specific, can include gloves. Examples include work gloves, cotton knits, yellow or green PVC. Another is clothing. We do have a policy on clothing. No shorts or cutoffs, no tank tops, no muscle shirts. Obviously keep clothing in good condition. Major hazards in construction. Now we're moving over to the construction sites. What are the common injuries? Falls. This is the leading cause of fatalities in the Canadian construction industry. Hand injuries are the most common medical treatment. Eye injuries are second after falls. Back injuries are third. Working around heavy equipment. Never assume an operator can see you. Always make eye contact. Going further, what are hazards? You can be struck, crushed by heavy mobile equipment. This is a leading cause of construction fatalities. Only authorized, qualified personnel must operate heavy mobile equipment. We should all know heavy mobile equipment have different blind spots. Therefore, eye contact is mandatory. Get the operator's attention before approaching and crossing into their path or swing zone. Normal site speed limits are 15-20 kilometers an hour for heavy mobile equipment. Always drive according to the conditions around the work site. You must have a designated traffic control person when an operator's direct line of sight is obstructed. The use of mirrors does not constitute direct line of sight. A person can be endangered by the operation of the vehicle or equipment or by its load. The designated traffic control person must always wear high visibility clothing. Light vehicles, such as company vehicles and heavy equipment. All provincial laws and regulations still apply. Daily inspection mandatory for all light vehicles and heavy equipment. Respect all site speed limits and signage. Fall protection. Personal fall protection system must be used when workers are working at unprotected heights of 10 feet or over. From a lesser height when it involves an unusual risk of injury. At a height of more than 4 feet if the work area is used as a path for a wheelbarrow or similar equipment, and also at any height when working over operating machinery, over water or another liquid, over hazardous substances or objects, or over by an opening in a work surface. Harnesses and lanyards. This is a basic component of personal fall protection. Wear correctly. Dorsal ring must be in correct area. All straps must be adjusted properly. All workers using harnesses, lanyards must inspect daily for cuts, burns, strands, abrasions, and signs of other defects or signs of damage. Discoloration and brittleness indicates heat or chemical exposure. Please refer to picture. Lifelines. These are three basic types of lifelines in association with the personal fall protection. Vertical, used with a rope grab. Horizontal, must be engineered. Retractable, self-attracting with a built-in shock absorber. As always, we inspect lifelines daily for cuts, burns, strands, abrasions, and other defects or signs of damage. Discoloration and brittleness indicating heat or chemical exposure. Fall prevention. This can include proper use of worksite access such as ladders and scaffolds, protective covers over floor and roof openings, warning barriers and bump lines, guardrail systems, travel restraint systems. We will talk further on this. Fall protection for floor openings. All floor openings must be protected by guardrails or rigid covers. The whole cover must be completely covering an opening, securely fastened, clearly identified as a cover, constructed of material adequate to support all expected loads over the cover. Examples of protective covers, with one guardrails around and the other one with a cover with indication of danger. Fall protection guardrails. All guardrails must have top rails, mid rails, and toe boards, and it must be secured to vertical supports. Posts must be no more than 8 feet apart. Top rails, mid rails, and toe boards must be on the interior of vertical posts opposite of outer edge being protected. Top rail must be at a height of 0.9 to 1.1 meters. And also, snow fence, caution, and danger tape are not guardrails. Examples of guardrails, as seen in the pictures. Safe access and egress. Refer to pictures for ladder and stairs. Employees, workers should always use stairs or a ladder to get up or down for elevated heights. Both hands must be free for grip and going up or down a ladder. A hand line should be installed to lower and raise all materials. Safe lifting. Please refer to pictures. Lift correctly using your legs, not your back. Get help on heavy or awkward loads. Stay close to the load you are trying to lift. Avoid unnecessary bending and twisting. This places the greatest amount of stress on your back. Tools and equipment on site. Safety features are not to be removed or made inoperable. Ensure tools are kept in good working condition. Tag damaged tools and immediately remove from service. Frequently check power cords for their condition. Use of compressed air. As a special case, compressed air is not to be used to clean clothing. Secondary secure whip checks must be in place. Safeguards for tools and equipment. No employees, workers shall remove, impair, or render ineffective the safeguards provided for the protection of workers. Right tool for the job. You see pictures of bad examples. Use the tools and equipment properly. When using tools, never place yourself in line of fire, pull or push in the proper direction. No homemade tools are allowed on site. Electrical hazards. You should always inspect all your tools before you work. Insulated grips on electrical tools protect you only when the insulation is free from cracks, tears, and worn spots. Always remember overhead power lines when using boomed equipment. Ladders. How to set up a ladder? Has to be on secure footing and at the proper angle. 1 foot horizontally for 4 feet up vertically. Ensure ladder components are not damaged or defective. Clean ladder from mud and grease. Clear landing areas. No debris and or materials must be left at the base of the ladder. Set ladder up at a safe distance from live electrical conductors and equipment. Portable ladders must be secured at the top and bottom to prevent movement. Maintain 3-point contact when climbing up or down. So this can be 1 hand and 2 feet or 2 hands and 1 foot. Ladders must extend at least 900 millimeters or 3 feet above the top landing. Always face the ladder when climbing, descending, or when working from a ladder. Step ladders. Make sure spreaders are pushed down and locked when using a step ladder. Never stand on the platform, the top step, or the payload shelf. Never use step ladders for temporary bracing or shoring. Excavation and trenching. Never enter a trench more than 4 feet without adequate protection. Proper access egress must be provided. Example, a ladder. All tools, equipment, materials, and spoils must be kept 3 feet away from the edge to prevent falling objects and/or materials from striking workers. Excavation and ground disturbance. Examples of controls to prevent cave-in can be 45-degree slope minimum, shoring, or using a trench box. Safe access egress must be available. An example can be a ladder or ramp. Physical barricades must be around the excavation or trench. When digging around underground hazards, hand digging is mandatory. Daily inspection of the excavation trench, and especially after a rainstorm. Main hazard from excavation trenches is cave-in. Okay, so workers must be protected from cave-ins. Slope or bench the sides of the excavation, support the sides of the excavation, or place a shield between the side of the excavation and the work area. Example is shown. Barricades. Physical hard barricades should be around excavations, around any open hole. Should be around the swing area, that's around the crane or excavator. Tag by installer, information on tag to include company, name, date, nature of hazard. Wooden guardrails, tubing clamps, no fencing, or rope with red flagging are all considered to be acceptable barricades. Example is shown. Other forms of barricades. Barricade tape calls attention to hazards but offer no physical protection. Yellow caution tape provides a warning that a hazard exists. The area can be entered once the hazard has been identified and it is deemed safe to do so. Red danger tape is used when there is a danger of an imminent hazard, such as falling objects. The area can only be entered with permission from the working group within. Another example of flagging, as we talked about before, yellow caution tape, red danger tape. Housekeeping. Workers should clean up spilled materials immediately to prevent incidents and accidents. They should use proper waste management bins for all hazardous waste. Clean up waste materials on a regular basis throughout the day to prevent making a hazard. Use proper lighting at all times. Don't work in the dark. Keep equipment clean and tidy. Overhead power lines. The table shown shows the minimum distance for persons and equipment to work near overhead power lines. 750 or more volts, but no more than 150,000 volts. The minimum distance is 3 meters. More than 150,000 volts, but no more than 250,000 volts, the minimum distance is 4.5 meters. More than 250,000 volts, the minimum distance is 6 meters. Fuel storage. This can include fuels, propane, and gas cylinders. Storage of all fuel must be outdoors. Shall be situated in such manner that container cylinders cannot be tipped over or run into by moving equipment. Appropriate signage must be used, such as danger signage in the picture. Red containers are for gasoline, yellow containers are for diesel. Going further on fuel storage, fire extinguisher must be located next to the fuel storage. Workers must be aware of fire extinguisher location. How to use a fire extinguisher. It is the pass method. Pull the pin located in the extinguisher's handle, aim the nozzle, horn, or hose at the base of the fire, squeeze the handle, sweep from side to side at the base of the fire until it is extinguished. Confined space. A confined space is defined as a place that is partially or fully enclosed, that is not designed or constructed for continuous human occupancy, and where atmospheric hazards may occur because of its construction, location, or content, or the work that is done in it. All three criteria has to be met to be defined as a confined space on the work site. Examples of confined spaces include vaults, tanks, pits, trenches, manholes, silos. Important note to follow is workers must be fully trained and certified to work in confined spaces before entering a confined space. If they do not have the training, they cannot enter the confined space. Workers must never enter such a space unless it has been correctly tested for oxygen deficiency, explosive, flammable, or toxic conditions, and all required forms are completed. Scaffolds. All scaffolds must be erected, modified, dismantled, and certified by a competent person in accordance with legislation and manufacturer specifications. All scaffolds must be tagged, signed by a competent person before being used, and they must be re-inspected on a regular basis. Elevated work platforms. Workers must be tied off to designated anchor points at all times while on the platform. Never leave the platform while elevated. Lower the work platform before moving. Training. Workers and employees are required to show proof of training from a recognized training provider at orientation or prior to engaging in any activity or task under expectation of the Ontario Occupational Health and Safety Act and or Ontario Regulation for Construction Projects. Examples include health and safety awareness training, WHMIS, working in heights, etc. Emergency muster meeting points. In the case of an emergency, all workers are to evacuate to the emergency muster points for head count by supervisor. Emergency response procedures and a list of emergency phone numbers are posted on the main safety board on each Maystar project, and in the head office, everyone should familiarize themselves with the emergency contacts and details. Muster points are located at the site trailer, site-specific designated locations as dictated by the supervisor and in front of the head office. Going further on emergency response procedures, these are the air horn blasts and what they mean. Man down, 1 long blast of air horn, 5-second delay, repeat. Fire, 2 consecutive blasts of air horns, 5-second delay, repeat. Evacuation, 3 consecutive blasts of air horns, 5-second delay, repeat. Assembly area will be at muster point number 1 or number 2 as dictated by the supervisor, and all personnel on site must sign in out for head count purposes. Emergency medical first aid. If an incident occurs on your site, please remain calm. Immediately advise your supervisor and the person designated for first aid. Protect the victim. Do not touch the victim unless you are specifically trained to do so. Call 911 and answer questions while remaining on the line. Workers' health information, first aid kit located in the office trailer. Names of first aid attendants are posted on the main safety board and on emergency stations. Washrooms, cleanup facilities are located next to Maystar trailers. Facilities will be cleaned and maintained on a regular basis. Workers must report any poor conditions or vandalism. Maystar's disciplinary action. These are the 3 steps we do follow if the safety violation is committed by a worker. First step, verbal warning. Second step, written warning. Third step, suspension, dismissed. Accident reporting and investigation. All work-related accidents, exposures, and equipment damage must be reported immediately to a supervisor. Supervisor to contact safety department to complete injury incident report. Incident reporting, as dictated before, must be reported to the supervisor in an HSE team. WSIB, Maystar has a comprehensive modified duty work program in which workers are required to participate. If you ever sustain an injury, we will work together to get you back 100% as soon as possible. Near misses. This is any situation that could have or may result in a potential injury to yourself or someone else must be reported. The goal of reporting near misses is to prevent injuries before they occur. Drugs and alcohol. Everyone is responsible for reporting to work in and remaining in a physical and mental condition that will enable them to perform their work in a safe and competent manner. The possession of intoxicants or illegal drugs and misuse of medications or other substances are prohibited. Workplace harassment. This is prohibited in the workplace. Mutual respect, cooperation, and understanding of all people in the workplace is expected from all workers' employees. Workplace harassment is the belittling or threatening behavior directed at an individual, worker, or a group of workers. Harassment can be based on race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, age, sex, marital or family status, political beliefs, or disability. This is prohibited by law and by corporate policy. Workplace violence. This is prohibited in the workplace. Workplace violence is any act or incident whereby an employee, worker is intimidated, threatened, abused, or assaulted in circumstances related to their work. This definition would also include, but is not limited to, all forms of harassment, bullying, intimidation, physical threats, assaults, or any other inappropriate, unwelcome, or intrusive behavior. As a review, these are our dues to be completed according to Maystar Safety Management System. Job hazard analysis daily by all subcontractors on site for their scope of work. Supervisor inspections by all Maystar supervisors on a weekly basis. Weekly toolbox talks for all workers on site. Mandatory sign-in out for all Maystar personnel, subcontractors, and visitors on site. Equipment inspections for all equipment on site being used by subcontractors. Reporting of all incidents by everyone on site to the supervisor and to the health and safety department. If you see something, say something. If you have any concerns, speak up. Report to supervisor. Thank you for listening to Maystar's Health and Safety Orientation. Please complete all the following questions. Your family and friends want you home tonight, so stay safe.